Hello everyone, welcome back. We are going to start Unit 6 in this video, Unit 6, Lesson 1. And the way I've decided to do this particular unit is a little different. Unit 6 will be divided in half. There will be a mid-unit test and an end-of-unit test. So I've decided to give you all of the notes for the first half of Unit 6. All of the notes are actually presented right here in Lesson 1. Okay? So these are all of the notes that you will need for the first 12 lessons of Unit 6 that are in these slides right here. Okay? Unit 6 is a trig unit. I know you talked a little bit about trig in geometry, probably last year or whenever you took geometry. So we're going to go a little more in depth into the sine, cosine, and tangent stuff that you learned about in geometry. And we're actually going to apply it to circles. We're going to apply our knowledge of sine, cosine, and tangent, and angles, and Pythagorean Theorem. We're going to apply all that to circles. And we're also going to look at something called a periodic function. It's a function whose values repeat themselves over a regular interval. So very often a periodic function would be like a wave function, like a sound wave function. A sound wave kind of repeats itself every so often. Circle functions repeat themselves every so often, so on and so forth. Those are called periodic functions. And that's really the purpose of this unit, okay? So like I said, again, all of the notes that you see in these slides here are all notes that you'll use throughout the first half of this unit. As we go through the rest of the lessons in the first half of this unit, there won't be any more lesson notes. We'll just refer back to the ones that were in Lesson 1. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the examples here. So, number 1, what is the radius of this circle? So here we have a point that is on the circle. Okay. We have a point that is on the circle that has the coordinates -5, 12. And the way we're going to figure out the radius is we're actually going to drop down from this point and we're going to create a right triangle. Okay. We know that in -5, 12, we know that -5 is my x value and 12 is my y value. Okay. X value is horizontal distance. So on the triangle, -5 is actually going to be the length of this side of the triangle. And +12, the y value is your vertical distance. So that's going to be this side of the triangle. If I can figure out this side, the hypotenuse right here, this will tell me what the radius is because this hypotenuse is also the radius. So to figure out the radius of the circle, we are going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. That's your a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem, your a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay? So remember, with the Pythagorean Theorem, c is always your hypotenuse. A and B are your two legs. In this case, your legs are 12 and -5. Does it matter which one is A and which one is B? No, it does not. So when I plug into my Pythagorean Theorem formula, it's going to look something like this. 12 squared plus -5 squared equals c squared. And I can now solve for c here. So 12 squared is going to be 144, okay? Negative 5 squared, that's negative 5 times negative 5, is going to be 25 equals c squared. So 144 plus 25 is 169. So I have c squared equals 169. And now I can solve this for c by taking the square root of both sides. And if I do that, I end up with c equals the square root of 169 is 13. So to answer the question for number 1, what is the radius of the circle? The radius is 13. Okay? If Q, number 2, if Q has a y coordinate of negative 4, what is the x coordinate? So notice, according to our diagram, we have a radius of 5. Okay? And what they're telling us is we don't know the x value, but we know that the y value is negative 4. Okay? So if I do the same thing I did in number 1 and create the triangle, okay, notice my radius or hypotenuse will be 5, okay? My y value is negative 4, meaning the vertical side of the triangle is going to be negative 4, and I need to figure out the x value. So I'm once again going to use my a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The only difference is now the 5 has to be my c because that is the hypotenuse, the side across from the right angle. So the hypotenuse or the radius has to be c. So when I plug in, the 5 has to be c, and then negative 4 will be a or b, and x will be the other. So it will look something like this: x squared plus negative 4 squared equals 5 squared. If you let negative 4 be a and x be b, that's fine too. Okay? But let's go ahead and solve here. So this will be x squared, negative 4 squared, that's going to be a positive 16, and 5 squared is going to be 25. Okay? I can now go ahead and subtract 16 from both sides. And I end up with x squared equals 25 minus 16, which is 9. And just like before in number 1, I can go ahead and I can square root both sides. So I end up with x equals the square root of 9, which is 3. So to answer the question, again, if Q has a y coordinate of negative 4, what is the x coordinate? The x coordinate we would say is 3. Okay, number 3. If B has a y coordinate of 4, what is the x coordinate? So again, we have a similar triangle here. Okay. We know that the radius is 5, and we know that this point, we don't know the x value, but we know that the y value is 4. So if I make my triangle, just like before, my hypotenuse is going to be 5. Okay. The vertical side is going to be 4, and the horizontal side, in this case, is going to be x. Okay. So let's go ahead and solve this again. So I have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. So when I plug in, it's going to be x squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. Okay. And I end up with x squared plus 16 equals 25, which is the same thing I had before up here. So I'm going to end up with x squared equals 9. Now, what's the difference here? The difference is going to be when I square root both sides, okay? I know when I take the square root of a number, the answer can either be positive or negative. The square root of 9 is 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. But the square root of 9 can also be negative 3 because negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9. In this case, notice my x value is going to be to the left of the origin. So in order to get to this point from the origin, I have to move to the left. Is left positive or negative when we talk about horizontal movement? Left is negative. So that means when I take the square root of 9, I actually have to take the negative value. So x in this case is going to be equal to negative 3. Again, because to get to this point from the origin, I'm going to have to move to the left, which is negative on the x-axis. So what is the x-coordinate of this point? The x-coordinate is going to be negative 3 instead of positive 3. Okay, let's look at number 4 right now. A circle centered at 0, 0 has a radius of 10. Point S on the circle has an x-coordinate of 6. What is the y-coordinate of point S? So this one, let me go ahead and draw a diagram this time. So I have a circle centered at the origin, and it's got a radius of 10, and it has an x-coordinate of 6. So an x-coordinate of 6 means that I'm moving 6 spots along the y-axis, okay? So that means the point can either be up here or it can be down here, okay? I know that the radius is 10. So if I draw the radius, I know the radius is 10, okay? But I got to figure out what the y value is, okay? So the point is here, there are two possibilities because I can move to the right 6, which would be an x value of 6, but then I can move up or I can move down to get a spot on the circle. So to figure out those possibilities, we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem again. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared, okay? Again, I know that my x value is 6, so I'll plug in 6 for a. I don't know my y value, and I know that the hypotenuse, the radius, has to be c, okay? So we have to solve this. So this becomes 36 plus y squared equals 100. Okay, so I'll now go ahead and I'll subtract 36 from both sides. And I end up with y squared equals 64. Okay, so to figure out the y value, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And when I take the square root, it could either be 8 or negative 8, right? So if I choose to take the positive 8, if y equals positive 8, then that would be this point up here. If y were to equal negative 8, it would be this point down here. Okay. The point is there are two possibilities. So to answer the question, what is the y-coordinate of point S? The y-coordinate is either 8 or negative 8. Okay, there are two possibilities for the y value. Because when I move to the right 6, and because it's a circle, I can go up or I could go down. Okay? So that is it for the examples for lesson 1, and that is it for lesson 1.